Nitty Gritty podcast, getting gritty with it with your hosts, Yariv Wallach and my co-star, Jamie Baskow. Jamie, how you doing, buddy?
Aloha mahalo. I just, wanted to come on and say aloha, to the Flyers fans.
I like it.
About to start living in paradise again. The Flyers are going to start kicking and rocking as of Monday. Then they travel to the hub cities, and we'll get into all that with the critical dates. There's a lot of critical dates that just came out about a half hour ago, and, this is a pretty darn good show.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. And I think this is kind of a perfect episode for a lot of geeky Flyers conversation. We have Chris Maher back on the show. If you guys don't remember him, he was back on here before.
Doing? What's up, guys?
Well, man. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Just remind everybody where they can follow you. Just give them somebody that, obviously Flyers Mania 93, I believe is the name on
Flyers
Twitter.
Mania 93.
Yeah, Flyers
my
Mania.
Twitter is different than YouTube because Twitter only lets you have a certain amount of letters in your name. But Twitter is just Flyers Mania. YouTube is Flyers Mania 93. All of it's linked. So really, if you get me on one thing, everything else should be there. You'll be able to find me on everything else.
Cool.
And I tweet with Jamie all the time, and Flyers Nitty Gritty all the time. So
Yeah.
it should all come up at once.
And obviously Chris writes for us, so it makes it a lot easier as well. But obviously we're all friends here. And I think, like Jamie was saying, we got a lot to talk about in this episode, actually, as the season starts coming back. Things are starting to get interesting again. Some good news, some bad news. All together, I think we want to start with the hub cities. Talk about the CBA announcements. Obviously, everything was going through. They were getting close. They had some contract issues there at the end. But overall, our cities are picked. We're going to Canada. Hockey is going to be in Canada. And I think for sure that a lot of these decisions were made because of financial reasons, regulatory reasons. And overall, though, no matter all the hurdles that we saw, it seems to be that they figured it out, at least enough to get a season started. Jamie, I'll start it off with you, and then Chris, obviously, you can say your piece after that. What do you think? What do you think about our current status as the hub cities have been announced and the CBA seems to be under control? What do you think about the current status?
I'm actually pretty impressed that the NHLPA, the NHL, Gary Bettman and Bill Daly, to put all their differences aside with Donald Fair and, the rest of the players and the other negotiators, I'm very impressed at how well and how smooth the CBA. I mean, there was a lot involved. It wasn't just the return to play. They had to have a new CBA agreement and stuff. And to come up with all the nooks and crannies, I'm pretty impressed. But, so that means that the Flyers Stanley Cup run will begin in Toronto. And which is great because that was just announced about a half hour ago that it was all speculative that the East would play in Toronto and the West will stay in Edmonton, and that is exactly how it will go. But it still needs to go to a vote. They're voting on it. They should have the results within 48 hours. So by Friday, I'm just very, very, very impressed because this is a 4-year agreement. So the contract will run through the 2025-26 season. But from years past that how heated both sides could get. And then they shut off all talks. They don't talk for months and months and months. And then here during the season, they're like, oh, okay, we'll wait until after the season. And then we'll try to, rekindle the talks. And there's just so much hatred on both sides. Not necessarily hatred, but, so many differences on both sides that they just can't come to terms. And what happened, 2 lockouts. So, and to see actually them be civil with the return to play. So the salary cap for this coming season will stay flat at $81.5 million. That is the proposed cap. That is also the proposed cap for next year. And it won't go up until they have a revenue for 2 years to see if the cap could raise, and it's supposed to raise, I think, to around like 82.4 million or something, or somewhere around there, 82 to 83 million, I think, by what are we in? By 2022-23.
And Jamie, can I ask a question there? Is that based off of revenue, though, right? So if they exceed revenue
so,
expectations, we
so
could see the cap increase by more than that. But again, they'd have to increase their
right.
revenue expectations, which I assume are pretty tempered, right?
That's why they want to keep the cap at 81.5 this coming season, 81.5 the next season, and then see where their losses were. I mean, let's be honest.
They have them.
These tests are that's where the cost is going to come.
I mean,
the test itself.
the games, the stadiums, the stands.
When they move to the hub cities in 10 days, but per Frank Ciravelli, they will test 20,000 times. 20,000 tests within the first 10 days at the hub city. That is
don't
insane.
like all the tests. Don't all them? Doesn't like one test count like $125 or something?
I don't know what the price is, but that's a lot of money. I'll tell you
that's what I heard. I'm not sure if that's like completely true. But that's what I heard.
In phase 2 right now, they're testing players twice a week, players and personnel. Of course, there's really not much in the way of personnel. You might have Jim McCross in there, and maybe one other person. Or something of that nature, but it's a very, skeleton crew that the, Flyers have there. So phase 2, you're getting 2 tests. Then they ramp it up in phase 3. So in phase 3, you might get tested 3 or 4 times per week. And then phase 4, you're getting tested daily before you leave the hotel. So 20,000 tests in phase 4. That's a lot of tests. So you're figuring probably around phase 3. You're probably doing in the first 10 days. You're probably doing anywhere from like 5 to 10,000 tests, on people for phase 3. And you're figuring, 30 players and four goaltenders, 30 skaters and 4 goaltenders are allotted for phase 3. So that's a lot of tests, man.
Yeah,
a lot of money, and that eats the cost from the Flyers. So the teams have to pay for these tests.
Of course.
NHL doesn't take over until phase 4.
But it's also the loss of money, right? On top of that, just all the revenue from just the games, like being in person, and then the games lost from the teams already. That's why they made it up in this early round robin. And
that's what scares me about these upcoming seasons in terms of the AHL and WHL, because they're not like the NHL. They can make money off of streaming, but that's not
all fan revenue. Yeah.
They make it from spectators, So like, if there's no spectators,
it'll have to be donations that probably keep a lot of those.
A lot of
government subsidies. Yeah, they're gonna have to work out a bunch of deals.
Tony Andrikaitis did a pretty good write up on that. I think it was about a month ago, if I'm not mistaken, on that. But
yeah, well, actually,
we'll have to see.
Chris, what do you think on the matter? Don't leave you in the dark too long.
Honestly, I was kind of I agree with Jamie, because I was kind of impressed. Not that like it went smooth, but just how quick it was done. Because like, to me, I kind of thought it would be like, I don't know, a week, 2 weeks, maybe a month. I mean, because realistically, when do they ever get things done quick? so it's kind of just like I was kind of just thinking to myself, like, this could take a while. And then I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess it's done, because it was like. And me and Yariv, we've talked about this before, like over the phone, like how I've watched like the hockey guy where he'll break stuff down, like with, they do this and this and this. And then it's like, like one day he's making something like, when's it going to be done and this and that. And then the next day he has the video that it's all done and it's like completed and this and stuff. It's like they get it done so quick.
I don't want to cut you off, but there's something referred to as Parkinson's law. It's the idea that no matter how much time a person has, if you give them extra time or a shorter amount of time, they're going to use all of that time. So negotiations typically will always use up all of the time. And you see when they didn't have any time, how much quicker it is to come to a decision. Just to add to your point there.
Yeah, and part of me thinks that it might have just been like, I don't know if they just, like, I don't know if you guys think this. Does anyone think that like they partially just agreed on something so that they could just have hockey come back?
No, there were some disagreements, and escrow was one of them. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest thing out of all of it.
For the players' side, that was the big one. And I think Yariv and I have talked about this in the past. I think that's why they included the Olympic participation in there.
Yeah, I agree too.
If they're going to take somewhere, or they were going to have to cut somewhere, let's at least give the players something that 90% of them wanted to do. like Jakub Voracek was a huge proponent. Alexander Ovechkin was a huge proponent of playing for their countries. Those are just two of them, that wanted to play for their countries.
And I wonder this too, Jamie. Does the NHL see an opportunity to make money during the Olympics as well?
They're going to cash in. Yeah.
Well, exactly. And before they were kind of flying high with profits and everything was going well. Now, all of a sudden, they've been derailed and they're like, well, maybe we need those games.
Yeah.
At this point.
And honestly, I think one of the biggest things too was TV. Because think about it, this is the one year
NBC.
where you can have Crosby,
Flyers.
McKinnon, and McDavid on the same team for Canada, and then you have Matthews and Kane and everybody else in the United States.
Coots, man? Can't forget Coots, Chris.
He'll be the fourth line center there, probably.
Yeah, really. That's the thing.
I don't care as long as he's on that darn team.
I mean, he'll be the best fourth line center in that tournament.
And honestly, it's funny because he wasn't even on the projected roster. Neither was
Brett Hall. He could put a Brett Hall in. Well, Giroux's getting up there in age, so I prefer, to be honest with you, I prefer to keep G at home, be with his kid, and stuff like that. So, in my opinion,
it's also 2 years from now.
Talk to him,
so realistically, it would just be
him. He would want to play, in
probably.
2022. So, but that's going to be a big thing, next season, because next season they're planning on starting December 1st, and so that runs the 2020-2021 season. So the following season in 2022, if they continue, this like they want to go to December to July. That's what the NHL, if this thing works, next season, that'll be the test run. If it works, it could be December through July, for the duration of, the rest of the sport. So with that being said, they're going to have a lot of hurdles in terms of the Olympic participation. So that'd be 2 weeks.
No doubt about it. And I feel like that's kind of what this is. It's like a never-ending stream of hurdles. But you can see we're getting past them. I think that's what's important. But we actually have some more bad news, and then let's get into some good news. So let's get into the bad news and kind of get it out of the way. We were talking about this right before this call. NCAA seems to be kind of canceling their games for the fall. We just saw the Flyers lose, and we'll talk about both of these together. Wyatt Kalynuk also signed with the Chicago Blackhawks. Now, obviously, he was supposed to play in college hockey at least for one more year. At least that was the anticipated result. But obviously, with probably news of this, figured, hey, I have a chance to play in the NHL. I'm going to go take it. Chicago's a place that's a little less competitive on the back end than the Flyers, especially on the prospect level. So, he takes his opportunities elsewhere. But I think part of that happened because of what's going on in the NCAA as well, kind of speeding that process up. So, yeah, that's going to affect a lot of things. I think we were talking about it right before this. We can expect maybe some of these players won't stay around in college hockey, maybe juniors, maybe overseas, where the leagues do open up and at least earn some revenue. We could see some talent spread all over the world, which might actually be good for hockey at the end of the day, because all of a sudden all these amazing prospects from NCAA will be playing with some professional leagues. Could make things a little bit interesting as far as, going out of the norm. But overall, I'm going to start with Chris on this one, and then we'll go to Jamie. What do you think about the current situation of NCAA hockey, and then obviously your thoughts on Kalynuk?
I mean, obviously the NCAA sucks, right? I mean, it's just like it's one of them things where like I didn't know about it until Jamie said something to us, and I was stunned, to be honest. Like I didn't really think. I mean, to be honest with you, I kind of saw it coming. Because with the direction, and this might sound stupid, but it might not at the same time, with the direction of the way that my school's going and the way that like the Archdiocese of Philadelphia is doing everything with for going back for next school year, to me, I kind of saw it coming because they said that we're going back in September, but they don't know if it's either in school or if it's online. And then they said if it's in school, we have to wear masks and all this stuff. So I don't really know what's going to happen. But to be honest, I kind of saw it coming. As for Kalynuk, it sucks. Yeah. I mean, I'm not worried about it. Realistically, he was a good defenseman for our 7th round pick. And I think it was more so that he probably thought, just like you said, he has more of a chance of making the NHL compared to with Chicago compared to the Flyers, because he's already thinking to himself, well, I have to battle behind all these guys like York and obviously many more, Zamula as well. I mean, there's so many guys he would have to battle behind to even make a spot on Lehigh Valley. And then throw in, you got Linus Hogberg. You still have all those veterans down there. What are they going to do with them? He probably just thought to himself, all right, this is probably the best bet. And he goes and signs with Chicago, a team that doesn't have the greatest defense. And as you said, prospect-wise, it's a little less deeper than the Flyers. But Jamie, if you want to go off on that.
He'll probably do well there and make us feel like shit. Probably shouldn't curse. Sorry, Jamie.
Well, in terms of the NCAA season, it's hockey season. It's all up in limbo, and it's never good when you start seeing D1 schools start to cancel their fall sports. So, and that's exactly what's happening in terms of the Ivy League. They have canceled all their fall sports. You're looking around, and they still have another month until they return to practice. So my wife is the head coach over at Salisbury, so she gets a lot of for women's basketball, so she gets some information and whatnot, and a little more than what you and I are accustomed to. And I won't go into details a lot into that, but there's a lot of schools surrounding that are canceling their fall sports. You're looking when D1 starts to cancel. That's when my eyelids started to rise, and I'm like, okay, the Ivy League canceled, their fall sports, not winter sports, but their fall sports. There's going to be a trickle-down effect somewhere. And the fall sports would reconvene in August practice, and then, games would start in September and October. And then, comes, the NCAA basketball and NCAA hockey, and as we know that Cam York has been training, with the University of Michigan since June. So a lot of these schools are still planning on having a season, but it's such a risk that if a college student or something comes down with this, and God forbid something were to happen, it's a huge, risk. And a lot of these universities don't want to risk that. So that's where that lies. But while Kalynuk, I was 90% confident, honestly, that he was going to sign. Why? He was linked to the Flyers organization because he's best friends with Travis Sanheim, because they both live, around the same town. So Wyatt Kalynuk's from Verdun, Sanheim's from Elkhorn. So like their towns are like literally 15 minutes apart. They played hockey. They're best buds. They play hockey in the summertime, and stuff like that. So that was one reason why I was 90% confident. The other reason I was 90% confident was every time I interviewed Wyatt Kalynuk, I've interviewed him 3 times now, and each time a key word that comes out is confidence. I'm extremely confident. So in my mind, being that he told me that he's extremely confident, regardless of who is pegged ahead of you, at the Lehigh Valley Phantom level and at the NHL level at this particular time, if you're an extremely confident player, it should not matter who is pegged ahead of you. Am I mad at Wyatt Kalynuk for making that decision to see an easier path possibly with the Chicago Blackhawks? Absolutely not. He had to do the best decision for himself. So not one of us should be upset or be pissed off at Wyatt Kalynuk for choosing possibly an easier route to the NHL. I say possibly because it's not guaranteed that he cracks the NHL. It is absolutely very difficult to crack the NHL. It is difficult to get to the AHL level. So that is, just because Zamula has excelled in juniors, and I believe he will excel at the AHL level, he hasn't proved it yet. Wyatt Wiley, because he excelled for Everett, does not mean he's going to excel for the Lehigh Valley Phantoms and the Philadelphia Flyers. Now, I'm not saying that Linus Hogberg, same thing. It does not mean that their game correlates to the NHL level. We have seen time and time again to where some prospects are just better at the AHL or in juniors, and their game just doesn't correlate to the NHL level. Now, and that's why I was a little shocked initially that he did not sign, was because of that. And he's a highly intelligent person. Chicago has, Chris, to mention about Chicago, they got some pretty darn good freaking prospects on that defensive side of the puck there, for the Chicago Blackhawks. That is a young Flyers defense over there that just hasn't cracked the NHL yet. But they have some high-end prospects over there. So where is he going to fit? All of a sudden now, with Kalynuk, there's a logjam at defense, for the Chicago Blackhawks now. I'm just saying, like, Chicago's defense isn't, like, horrible,
No,
like,
I wasn't saying they were.
No, I'm not saying you. I'm not saying you. I'm just saying I'm just saying at the prospect level, they have tons of prospects there.
Not in the same depth that the Flyers have, right? That's kind of the thing. Is like think about the names that you just mentioned. Well, think about the names that you mentioned, and then you think about Mark Friedman, Sam Morin's still in the background. You think about how old Kalynuk is. He doesn't have just those guys, right? He still has Haig. He's got Cam York, who's got to compete against. Ronnie Attard will be here. He's got so many guys in his age range that are probably as good, if not better than him. So that's where he's got that problem. I feel like Chicago has this gap where he's got these older guys and then a bunch of guys that might not be there that long, and then this slew of new guys, but not like the full depth that the Flyers have. I don't think most teams have that. I think Chicago has some high-end guys, but not enough of them. That's why I think he takes his shot over there.
And it's funny you mentioned Ronnie Attard. You know what
will
honestly
quickly
happen? Cam York and Ronnie Attard could both sign next season.
Right.
I'm being dead serious.
I agree. Ronnie Attard's an overager.
When you think about it, right?
He'll be 22.
We all
23.
know that Cam York is going to sign. I think that's pretty much a given, right? I'd be highly surprised if he doesn't sign at ELC after his sophomore season. But Ronnie Attard, like, I think the Flyers now, since they lost Kalynuk, are going to be all in on trying to tie these NCAA guys up sooner rather than later, and that includes Jay O'Brien.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think for one, well, you got to wait a little bit on Jay O'Brien, but I do think he's coming back thoroughly. I guess I don't know how to say that, but I do agree with you on the Ronnie Attard element, and you got to figure he's an overager as well, right? He's a little bit older than even I believe Kalynuk was. I think because he was 20 when we drafted him, which is very old for a drafted player. Yeah, but he had a kind of an explosive 20, 1920 develop later. So you figure with a guy like that, they might be thinking AHL bound in general. Like we want him playing on the Phantoms like ASAP because physically he's more mature. We want him playing against men. We want to start developing him internally. I mean, Robert Haig went that route. I think a lot of these young kids start getting him in the system together. And I think Ronnie Attard's a perfect example. Big, right-handed, aggressive guy.
And then we got Mason.
And NCAA, right? Dude, we haven't even – I know. Nobody even talks about it.
I love it, dude. I love it.
So that's kind of my point, right? There's too many here where you're, like, losing track. And Kalynuk was one of those guys. I would actually say he's higher than some of the guys that we still have, at least on my personal list. But that doesn't mean he's going to end up being a power play guy here. Like you mentioned Zamula. Zamula is going to take those power play.
Zamula and Wiley. Both of them will take, the PP.
I think – for sure Zamula, and then you still have Friedman, and then that doesn't include any veteran that comes in.
I got Friedman making the team next year, man. I'm sorry, man. I'm pretty high on Mark.
So do I.
If it depends who's here from a veteran standpoint.
I don't give a darn who's here. That dude slides in.
You talk about 9 defense.
I don't give a damn.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying to you. I like him too.
Listen, I love Mark. That guy, man.
He's an NHL defenseman, but
he doesn't get enough freaking credit for what he does. I mean, just year after year, he just goes out and plays a darn sound game. He's the best Phantoms defense year in and year out. He goes about his game quietly, plays a mistake-free game. You don't hear his name. You don't want to hear his name. Mm-hmm. But when you want to hear his name, the dude is pinching. He knows when to pinch.
I'll be honest. He was noticeable in all of the games. We're like way off topic. He was noticeable in every NHL game because his personality and the tenacity that he does play.
He was perfect.
Yeah, that's what sticks out.
That's I'm serious.
An interview with him earlier. So
I did. He was perfect. And no, I'm not like, It's
the same reason Zamula got an NHL contract.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, but
I realized I didn't even mention Phil Myers. I realized that all these young defensemen.
That's because he's already pegged in the top 4.
I know, but if you think about it, like I was already like, he's different from that group, and he's 22 years old.
Yeah,
he's the same age as Kalynuk, right?
I think so. Yeah, they're around the same age.
Or 20, 23. Yeah, he might be 23 now.
I think they're the same age. I'll look it up. Go ahead, Chris. You wanted to say something though? I think I cut you off.
I was just gonna say like Freeman, like I've been watching him with my dad for a couple years, and I've been like, man, like he stands out to me all the time. Like he stood out to me in 2018, like Cam York did when he came in Dev Camp. That's how much he stood out to me, and it was just it was phenomenal to see like how he moves the puck and oh my god, and
I think keep
when
on
he
teaming
came
it.
up, yeah, he reminds me
Timonen,
of Timonen and Justin Braun combined.
That's pretty good. That's a pretty good combination.
Like, physically moving the puck, power play, it's like perfect.
Speaking of Justin Braun, did you see his picture with his child today?
No, I did not.
He's heading back to Philly. He's at the airport, and he or something of that nature. It looked like an airport to me. Maybe I'm incorrect there. I don't want to put anybody with that COVID scare or whatever. But he was holding up his daughter. Yeah, pretty neat picture, beautiful picture.
Nice.
And of course he's smiling. I don't think he ever stops smiling. He's like Ronnie Attard. Both of them always smile.
And that's why you traded
throughout
for
the
him.
whole development. You know what I'm talking about, Yuri, because you were in that locker room for the dev camp this year.
To be honest, dude, I don't remember Braun in particular, but
no, not Braun. I'm saying because he wasn't at dev camp, but
dev
Hard,
camp. I'm sorry.
And he had a smile on.
Oh yeah.
The entire time.
Yes.
Like, he didn't take it off at all.
Dude, I actually, it's really funny you say that. I absolutely, completely noticeable. He was smiling the entire time. He looked like he was having the most fun of all players on the ice. And
he wasn't even. Sometimes he was just standing there.
Yeah, and I remember thinking that Cam York already looked like a professional hockey player.
Oh,
dude, I said the same thing.
I was like, he already carries himself like he is the
absolutely phenomenal.
I was watching him pretty tightly, and I was like, okay. I was like, so it's like easy for you like that, huh? Like you already don't care. I was like, you're 18 years old. He's an underager, by the way.
Classically trained.
He's very young for his
interviews and stuff. He's very mature.
Well, he's young for his age group too. Him and Jack Hughes were the youngest on that team.
Yeah,
and they're both the underager, and he's a defenseman.
Yeah.
That's
and Jack Hughes,
so different. And he was the number one
Jack
defenseman.
Hughes is a great player, guy. He will, for all those Devil fans that are listening to this podcast.
I have zero doubts.
But I'm telling you right now, I have high hopes for Jack. I'm telling you, there's no doubt in my mind that guy's going to be a good player.
We have Russ Cohen coming on next week, and he is a big Jack Hughes fan. And we'll have him talk about Jack Hughes. What?
As he should
be. Well, the Hughes brothers in general. Actually, he had a great point. I caught a little bit of the Eklund show today, and we were talking about, just to step back real quick, about Canada, those hub cities of Toronto and Edmonton. I didn't consider it until he said it, but I've obviously said something like in the past. Canada, it's 70 cents to the dollar. Everything in there is going to be cheaper. So that actually makes big sense as why they use Canada. There's a humongous cost save there. Because literally, if you're thinking about U.S. money converted over to Canadian dollar,
that's a good point.
There's a 30% difference.
Every dime.
Yeah, that's like I heard him say that. I was like, yeah, absolutely, he's right. Because you have to think about all of the cost saving, even for the tests. I wonder if even healthcare comes into play there, right? Because they have socialized healthcare, so they could take advantage of that system. I don't mean to say it that way.
Well,
but
to have hockey reconvene, they probably would do it for free.
Yeah. That's not you're probably not kidding. So let's move on real quick.
No, I'm being serious. I was being dead serious with that. I guarantee, you know what, that they'll put together some type of charity or something, a GoFundMe, and people will donate. Help
hockey fight COVID.
Listen, because you know what, it's the motherland of hockey. It's a great nation.
Oh, I love that.
And that's no disrespect to Canadians. They love that sport so much. It's like, and we love it here in the US.
I would donate.
I would too. If Flyers Nitty Gritty would donate $100 towards the cost.
Oh, easily, for sure.
I'd literally give all the money I have.
Oh my God, Chris, man. I might start that GoFundMe.
Yeah, I was gonna say this is recorded, fellas, so just remember that. You might have to shell out all your money at the end. All right, let's move on real quick. I do want to mention, since there are competition, and then I want to go pretty much to all Flyers after that. So let's talk about Lindy Ruff getting the head coaching job for the New Jersey Devils. I'm probably going to get laughed at for this one. I think this is actually a really good hire. I think this is a smart hire. I don't think Lindy Ruff is your coach of the future for the Devils. However, I don't think that's what they need him for right now. They have a group of very young hockey players who haven't really succeeded at all for a while, and they had Taylor Hall, who was kind of the heart and soul. Now, people who talk shit on Claude Giroux, like imagine he left us during our rebuild, like what that would do to our organization. So that, in a way, kind of happened to them. They're going to recover quicker than people anticipate, probably like the Islanders, but you need good coaching. I think at the very least, I think he'll be able to get a system in place there and make them feel like an NHL regular team. Not a knock on John Hines, but again, it's that same conundrum that Hackstall went into. You have a young coach with a young team, and look what the difference of veterancy did for the Flyers. So Lindy Ruff will probably bring in some other veterans, and I'm sure they're going to add some veteran players now, and probably take the route the Flyers went. Chris, I'll go to you first again this time. What do you think about Lindy Ruff? Because you made a face, and then Jamie.
I completely agree with you. I honestly thought that I would come on here and say that it was a good signing, and I'd be looked at as an idiot. And now that I'm not the only one, I guess. But I like it. I think it's a good signing. He's a good coach, and exactly what you said. It's what the Devils need. It's not like they need like this, young guy, and it's not like they needed like this humongous name as a head coach. It's not like they needed like Joel Quenneville type of name. You know what I mean? I think it's a good signing for them. I feel like it'll help out their defense because I think as you said, they have a young team. They also have enough veterans too, where he'll kind of boat in there and kind of help in with all of them, and it'll kind of congeal into one. I don't know necessarily if New Jersey will be that much better of a team. I don't really think playoffs with New Jersey yet. But I think maybe in a couple of years. But I think it's a good start for them. I don't necessarily think it's more of a kind of like a 1 year and then they're in the playoffs. I think it's more of just a start here and then progressively go from there. Where other teams have maybe taken a little step back from that and said maybe like 1 year and then kind of fall back a little bit and then go back, things like that. But I think it's a good signing for Jersey. And Jamie, if you want to go off of that.
Yeah, I mean, Lindy Ruff is a good coach in terms of getting a system down, and I think that you and Sharif hit that home there. I'm a little shocked that they didn't choose Peter Laviolette. Peter Laviolette is very good with young players. He grew a young Giroux made him sort of into the player he is today. But Giroux
Best player in the world.
Yeah, exactly, and he just got the best overall talent out of that 2009-10 team. I mean, a team that when you're looking at it on paper, it's like, how the hell did they go to the Stanley Cup Finals? You know what I mean? Because there it goes again, is that a coach, if you have a good coach, you're able to uplift a team that's mediocre and take them to the next level. And yes, there are a lot of different parts that happen. There was a lot of clutch scoring. They got lucky, but I think every team gets lucky, and you need some bounces to go your way in order to make the Stanley Cup and eventually win the toughest trophy in sports, in my opinion. But Lindy Ruff is a system coach, like an AV. But he might just, maybe not as – he may not be, like do what AV did for the Flyers, this season and totally turn around the team like Chris said. The Devils are a very young team. The problem with the Devils, they got a good goaltender in Blackwood back there. He's like he put up Carter Hart-like numbers. Of course, he's 2 years older than Carter Hart, so that is a foundation to start. Then you filter it in. You got all these young players. You got Jack Hughes. You got Taylor Hall. They traded away Wayne Simmons and stuff, but they might need some vets. But the thing about the Devils is they have like 18 or 19 picks for this draft. That's a ton of picks, you know what I mean? And like I think they have like 3 first-round picks. I think they do, or something to that nature. Didn't they acquire like a first-round pick at their first-round pick at the trade deadline or something like that? I'm like, holy moly! So a team that scares me is a team like the Devils, because they're just going to get all this talent, prospect-wise, and they're eventually going to get to the verge of where the Flyers are. Now, I think they're still 2 to 3 years behind the Philadelphia Flyers in terms of developmental purposes, but depending on how fast these prospects bloom in their system, they could catch up to the Flyers, eventually. But, I'm not saying that'll happen next year. I'm like on Chris's level.
So let me correct what you said. They don't have 19 picks.
They have 10.
Yeah, I was gonna say they do have 3 first-round picks. No second, no third. They have 2 fourths, a fifth, a sixth, and a seventh. I would imagine they might try to move up in that first round, or just take all 3 first-round picks.
3 first-round picks in a heavily loaded first-round draft.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be good for them.
It doesn't matter where they're at. They're going to get 3 pretty good players, no matter where they're at.
You know what I just thought about?
So, that scares me. They're getting 3 first-round picks. I think they have the 7th pick in the draft, right? Isn't it the 7th pick?
Yeah, and then they have Arizona's and Vancouver's. That's 2 teams that if they lose, they could get
the
a
first
chance.
overall pick.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is some of these players, just because of where they're at right now, like Lucas Raymond, could possibly drop to 7, depending on what team, picks. So, if the Devils were to get Lucas Raymond, that perks my hair up a little bit, to be honest, because he's the next. I think he's the next star.
I personally think they kind of have a while to go. Look at.
Oh
they
yeah,
do too.
Look at Buffalo.
I'm saying they're about 2 to 3 years behind the Philadelphia Flyers.
I think they're more than that.
I think they're more than that.
I think they're a lot more than that.
They have 3 first-round picks. If they hit on these 3 first-round picks, these guys could possibly be playing not next season, but the following year after that.
But it took Arizona. Look at Arizona Coyotes. I mean, that team is loaded.
It takes time. It's not like they're going to be getting
I do agree with Jamie overall. It's a scary combination, but I do think they're far enough behind us where they're not going to be a big problem in the immediate
Once
future.
they got cap, they have cap space, so they could go out and spend. And
but who
they have
wants
the most
to go
cap
there
space
right
out of
now?
any team.
What'd you say, Chris?
They have the most cap space out of any team. They have 8,775,000.
That's without moving.
And they have
none on LTIR too.
But look at their top players. Travis Zajac makes $6 million. Okay, and I don't dislike him, but he's definitely at the end of his career. Kyle Palmieri is great. Actually, at $4.6 million, I think is a steal for that guy.
That's like Couturier for them.
Yeah, they have Gusev. Okay, Miles Wood.
Oh, it's decent.
Jack Hughes, and then obviously Jack Hughes, Heischer, McLeod, they have Anderson, Brasper, Jat. Again, not enough names here for me to be like, oh, I'm scared of this team. They need a complete rebuild.
PK Subban.
Now Subban, I really like. I mean, David
they don't have the greatest defense.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so exactly.
It's going to take them time.
I personally believe that this team is 2 to 3 years behind. When you have a goaltender in Blackwood, you have a foundation in place.
Sure, I'll give you that. Yeah,
all they need are a few, veteran defensive pieces.
Well,
one could be Braun.
They need an elite forward to add.
Yeah,
to
they don't have that star.
That's ready. They have the young versions. They definitely have young stars, but they need that Taylor Hall. Like Palmieri's great, but he can't be the only one. That's what I mean. They need to add actual good depth. That's the reason Buffalo made a mistake trading Ryan O'Reilly. I mean, that's quite obvious. Yeah. If you look at the way that roster is constructed, if you had Riley and you had Eichel in the combination of the two, I mean, that's what that team needs today.
Honestly, now that we start talking about this, you think there's any way they go for Braden Holtby?
No. They already have Blackwood. They have Blackwood.
Yeah, true.
Blackwood put up, I don't know.
Either him?
I don't think you're giving enough credit to what Blackwood did over there.
I think they might go for – well, they might go for a good backup, though, to his point. Holtby's going to get a monster contract. I mean, the reality is Holtby's going to be the prize goaltender available.
They have Blackwood, who's 23 years old. He's 2 years older than Carter Hart. Put up Carter Hart-like numbers. I think he ended with a 2.59, 2.60 GAA, around the same record as Carter Hart. I mean, he has no defense at all. He actually carried them, this year. He had a very good season for them.
Yeah,
So
he
like
did.
like I'm saying, they already have a foundation in place with Blackwood. They just need to do what the Flyers did, like this past season. But it's going to be a little more than what it is,
I hope
this
they
past season.
suffer.
Huh?
I hope they
So do
suffer
I.
like we
I do
suffered.
too.
So do I.
Listen, by no means do I want to see.
No, I know.
You know what I mean? I'm
Well,
just saying the Flyers will be ahead of them for at least 2 to 3 more years.
Let's say
But-
10, Jamie. Forget the Devils. No, I hear you.
20
I hear
years.
you.
20
Listen,
years.
Jack Hughes is for real. Let's move on. I said we're going to talk about the Flyers, and we're talking about the Devils, which is like the worst thing ever.
This is now
No,
the
no,
Devil's Gritty podcast.
So real quick, I'm going to combine these two together. So Andy Andreoff is on site. That essentially means he's one of the Black Aces. He's probably going to be lumped into that group. Not a big surprise. I mean, he's one of the call-up players. He's got skill. He can play against NHL players. He has an NHL history. He's one of the best players on the Phantoms. He's a veteran. It makes sense. And in combination with that, I just want to give Scott Lawton the shout out of getting the Pelle Lindbergh Memorial Trophy of the Most Improved Player. And I obviously think that Scott Lawton is a reason we don't need Andreoff in the lineups. Like, hopefully Scott Lawton will be healthy and everything. But I think they play a similar type of role. And I'm just about Scott Lawton, quite frankly, is I think he is really maturing into a great player. I wouldn't be surprised if he takes another step in his development. I don't think he's hit the max of his potential. I think he could still end up being a 40-point guy, like maybe like a John Madden type of role. I don't know if he's going to be as good as John Madden. But again, just even at maybe towards like his 30s, maybe 28, I could see him being a really good third-line center or third-line player that plays against some of the best players in the world and still produces points. What a great season by Scott Lawton. Jamie, what do you think about Andreoff and Lawton? We'll combine the two together.
Well, we called Andreoff, didn't we? We've been saying for the past month and a half that Andy Andreoff could possibly be a Black Ace and that he should be based off of playoff experience. Yes, he only has one career playoff game, but he was with teams that were in the playoffs. So he's sitting there waiting to be, and you're a healthy scratch. You're in the press area. So you're still around the team watching them. You're around them for the playoff run. You are getting playoff experience, even though you're not on the ice getting the experience. And that is one reason why he is in the lineup. They needed that. They needed that in case things start to go south. The Flyers are a very young team here. They have a lot of young players. You have a Joel Farabee. You have your top Black Ace is Morgan Frost, who's only 21. Joel Farabee is 19 years old. Scott Lawton is still young. He's only 26 years old. Coots is only 27. Now, Coots has tons of playoff experience, and so does Scott Lawton and whatnot. But TK is young. Ivan Provorov is young. Now they also have playoff experience as well. But overall, you know what I'm talking about. Like Felipe Myers is young. He's going through his first playoffs. Travis Sanheim has playoff experience. Their back end, you got Robert Haig. You got young players throughout. You got Carter Hart. This is his first taste at the NHL playoff level. Where I'm getting at is that you need an Andy Andreoff, a veteran presence who has played in the playoffs before. And if he's not on the ice, he could talk to them and try to help them in the mental aspect of the game. So him just being around the team could maybe help. Okay, hey, just calm down. This is, yada, yada, yada. You know what I mean? But in terms of Scott Lawton, thank you, Ron Hextall. And this is a shout-out to Ron Hextall because Scott Lawton would not be with this team today if it was not for Ron Hextall. In 2017, Ron Hextall went against the grain, and a lot of people called him out for protecting Scott Lawton in the 2017 expansion draft. Yarif, do you remember that?
Of course I remember that.
And he got called out for that, didn't he? Like, oh, my God, why is he protecting Scott Lawton, right?
Dude,
who we have right now? We would have Pierre Bellemare getting the Pelle Lindbergh Trophy and getting the Yannick Dupree Award, you know what I mean? As opposed to Scott Lawton, you know what I mean? So because Scott Lawton, no doubt, I guarantee, if Scott Lawton was exposed, there was no doubt in my mind
he would have been taken.
Going to take a shot on this young man who technically sort of wasn't given a shot yet at the
Imagine
NHL
him
level.
on Vegas.
And you know what, Chris? There was a perfect thing that he said today in his interview with Zach Hill. Perfect. He said, you know what? I spun around circles. I went around circles, spinning wheels. And look, now I made it at the NHL. it helped me calm down, and stuff like that. His path to get here helped him calm down and stuff. And now he's become more comfortable playing in the NHL. He really, I think, like where he was getting at was he really wanted to give, some kudos to Ron Hextall in there, because the Flyers, and I'll say Chuck Fletcher too, because the Flyers have been very patient with Scott Lawton's development. And all three of us have talked about this, and you know what I'm talking about in terms of Nolan Patrick and everything else that we talk about all the time, off the air. But every prospect develops at a different rate, okay? There were many people that were calling for Sean Couturier to get traded because he didn't have the offensive numbers and stuff like that. Oh, he'll never be nothing more than a 3C, or something like that. So why don't we trade him today to try to get more picks and players for him? You know what I mean? Some people came with that. It wasn't many, but there were some. And that's where I'm getting at. These two players like Coots and Scott Lawton, you have to be very patient with these young players, because just because wherever they get picked, you could be the first overall selection, second overall selection, third overall selection. It shouldn't matter where you get picked, because every prospect is different in terms of their development, and stuff like that. They need time to mature. Have you ever gone
Jamie,
into
like, especially like
excelled right away? Like, I mean, the first day? Have you made mistakes on your first day? I mean, he is the epitome of patience.
Yeah, and Jamie, I think that really, to go off your point there, like about with Hextall too, is that how not so much Hextall but Fletcher, how he hung up the phones when they were trying to trade him or teams were calling to trade him for the trade deadline, when he kind of just said, you know what, we're going to take this and hold it. And it was just, honestly, with the way that I see Lawton is like, I feel like it's more, he plays better with more of the similar guys that are kind of in the same boat as him, if that makes sense. Like, he's phenomenal with Kevin Hayes, phenomenal with Konechny, and that was I think that was really one of the best lines from this season. And I feel like it was more so of Lawton being comfortable with those guys, because one, Lawton and Hayes, obviously you guys saw it with the way that they were in the locker room and everything. They're comfortable with each other, and those three right there are like they're basically like the three class clowns, if you want to call it that. Lawton, Hayes, and Konechny, they're all pretty funny guys, but honestly, and Reeve, I know, to go off your point too earlier, how you said about Lawton being like a 15-goal guy. I honestly could see Scott Lawton putting up 20 goals. I honestly could. I don't know how many times he does it, but I honestly could see him doing it maybe once or twice, maybe even 3 times. With the way that he's been playing and the way that he's improved in these last 2 years, he's really improved.
Well,
I honestly think he could get 20 goals.
Michael Raffle.
Do people think? Well,
Raffle was key there.
So there's an example. Do people think Raffle was going to be a 20-goal scorer? No. Do people think that Scott Hartnell was going to be a 40-goal scorer? Definitely not. Why? Because these are complementary type of players, and I think Scott Lawton is a complementary guy. That's why he was taken the first round, late first round, right? He's a guy. Even Tom Wilson. These are complementary type of players who you can throw them out there with elite guys. They have the skill set to keep up with any of them, contribute offensively, defensively, but also add another element. And that's what Scott Lawton kind of has. He's not an agitator in any kind of way. He's not that guy. He's more of a defensive center in a lot of ways, but because he doesn't have the most size, like if he was 6'3", I think he'd be 100% a setter. I think they just see that they can throw him on the wing because he's not the biggest guy, and he also can skate. And I do agree with you. I think that combination worked really well this year. It was upsetting when they tore it apart.
Yeah.
But again, I think there's a lot of room for movement there. Like, he's a guy I think you can move all up and down the lineup if you need him to. And I wouldn't be surprised if he even gets some time with Claude Giroux at some point if he really plays as well as he continues to keep going. I mean, think about it. Like, he put Lawton, Giroux, and Couturier as a line. Like, defensively, I mean, they're not going to get
really
beat.
good. Yeah.
So, I don't know. These are just ideas. But, again, this is like why you like guys like Scott Lawton. You can do almost anything you need with them.
It's funny you mentioned lines. You could sort of throw the lines out the window, so to speak, right now, because this is a new season. You know what I
Oh
mean? So
yeah.
people already think that the Giroux, Coots, and and Voracek line will probably be together. And you know what? Honestly, right now, if I had to guess, I would probably keep that line together. But lines 2, 3, and 4, you could throw all them out the window right now because this is a different era. This is a different beast that players aren't familiar with. They're not familiar with the no crowd noise, the no having no spectators. This is the NHL, the new NHL playoffs. Everyone is healthy. Everyone has had time off. Everyone is on the same level right now in terms of, rust and everything else. So what does that mean? The lines are going to be, you'll see one line, will probably be like G Thompson and, maybe NAK or something, you know what I mean? Something like that, some crazy lines that maybe come to fruition because of the overall situation. And I'm sitting here laughing, but you know what? If these lines are going to gel, like within the first period, I can see AB saying, okay, I will put G with Thompson and NAK.
And especially AV too. He's the guy that literally changes the lines in like every period some nights. And he just seems like the guy that literally you could I think if you could probably sit here and we get the final roster, we can make every line combination possible and it would probably be used. I'm not even joking. It would literally, you could put whoever you wanted because I think AV is the guy where he knows what guys can work with each other. I mean, you guys probably remember this. Around like the end of February, they had that fourth line of Butterman, NAK, and Raffle. That line was phenomenal together. Like they I believe it was that game versus either Winnipeg or San Jose. They must have kept the puck in the Flyers offensive zone for maybe 2.5 minutes straight. Unbelievable the chemistry these guys had together. And it's just like I think AV put that together because he knew it could work. And he knew, the skill sets on each of these guys. And it's funny how you bring up NAK because I would love to see him play with guys like Voracek or Kevin Hayes or maybe up more in the lineup because I think he could really succeed there as well.
That might be NAK's future. It might be a complimentary guy. He's also pretty young. And I think a lot of what we're seeing is just that the system is kind of in play with AV. That's why we see all these different combinations. He feels confident doing it because he's like, oh, I know this guy knows his role. So if I put him here, he'll play accurately. It's a consequence of having talent. The Flyers have a lot of talent, which actually I think we got two things left here. One, talk about our 30 players. But I think this is perfect to go into this, and we'll end with our 30 players. So I'll switch up our topics here. So we got Pitlick, we got Grant. I think this goes right along with the Lawton conversation and Andreoff and like all these type of players, right? NAK, the guys who are living in that space. Pitlick or Grant, let's say either or, both, whatever. Who do you think gets signed? I mean, I'll just say, in my opinion, I think Pitlick walks. I think Grant gets re-signed. I think Grant might get a 2-year deal. I think he's ideally the type of guy you want because he plays center and wing. The fact that Fletcher referred to him as an elite penalty killer, which is kind of what we need, is a guy who can always play PK. We have plenty of young players who can play offensive roles. It's the defensive roles, again, the physicality, and he brings both. So just like Lawton, I think he's another Lawton with more size and maybe your fourth line center of the future, not having to rely on Bunneman or put some kind of kids there. So that's how I see it. I think Pitlick is great, but I think somebody else will probably take his role. Just sheer cap issues right there. Not really. I think ultimately I'd want to keep both, but my thought really is, Grant. Go ahead. Yeah, I know you're feel strong about Pitlick.
I definitely agree. I mean, I think it's more. Honestly, I think it's more for in the future than it is right now for what they do with these guys. Because if you think about it, and both these guys are phenomenal players. And as you said the last time I came on this podcast, how you just said the same thing. How Grant, center, versatile, can play wing at the same time. He's cheaper, and he can still be that fourth line guy. He can also play third line wing, whatever you want to throw him at. And, realistically, I think that Pitlick, I honestly think he's going to want to raise. And I honestly don't think the Flyers are going to want to do that. And realistically, they might have to purposely let him walk because of Justin Braun. So they might have to do that as well.
So both of them walk, but
yeah. And Oh God. But honestly, I feel like that if Pitlick walks, I think that might be able to open up a spot for Morgan Frost as well to come in and play maybe.
I think he's going to take it.
Yeah.
I'll be
I
honest.
agree too.
Yeah. Well, I think you want me to be quite frank. I think Braun, Pitlick, and Grant walk. I think
All three?
All three. I do. Yeah.
It's not impossible.
You already know how I feel about Justin Braun. A team like the Devils has cap space. I think that they will throw.
There's a lot more too.
They're going to have.
Yeah.
They could possibly throw $3.8 to $4 million out there. Do you want the Flyers to re-up Justin Braun for a 3.84? No. They're already in. Where I'm talking about is that they don't have to necessarily be careful, but it depends on how much these other RFAs that the Flyers have are going to want. We don't exactly know what the players are asking for at this particular time. This is all a guessing game at this time. Only the players know. I think Pitlick played himself into a raise, and I think Derek Grant also played himself into a raise. And where I'm getting at is that me, for one, you already know, I don't want to throw more than 1 year. If I had to, tops, I'd go 2 years. I wouldn't go anything over 2. Both players, I love Pitlick, I love Grant, and I love Braun too. I love all three players, but at the end of the day, the Flyers have people within the system to come in and take their spot. Would it be nice to have either Pitlick or Grant? I think it would be Grant over Pitlick, in my opinion, because I think Grant would be cheaper than Pitlick. But because I think Pitlick's going to make anywhere from 2 to 2.5 is where I'm getting at. And I think he played himself into a term deal here. I think he could go and get 3 or 4 years somewhere else. And I think Derek Grant could possibly even get upwards of 3 years somewhere else with a team like the New York Rangers, a team like and I'm just throwing it out there, the Devils, or a team like the Carolina Hurricanes, or, I'm just using the Metro as an example here because they're all young teams as well. So, I hate to say it, but I just got that feeling that I think all three will walk. Now, in the event that does happen, you do have Morgan Frost, and I do have Morgan Frost playing. But I think that being that the Flyers haven't moved Morgan Frost to the wing, I don't see them just shuffling Morgan Frost to the wing. I see him being a center, whether it's a 3C, somewhere's around there, 4C. I don't know where it's going to be. But I think at this stage in time, they want Morgan Frost as a center, in my opinion. Until he gets moved to the wing, I don't think that the Flyers want to groom him as a wing player, in my opinion. Now, he can play the wing if he wanted to. Then you have Linus Sandin, and you also have
Allison.
No, Tanner Lazinski. Tanner Lazinski, I think, is a little ahead of Allison just because he's been healthier than Allison. Sure. And I think that he's a little more versatile. Plus, he's a physical player.
He's like that Scott Lawton type of mold.
Yeah, like a grinder. He's versatile. He could play center and wing. He could chip in on the PP if needed. He could play the PK if needed to. He could play anywhere up and down this lineup and anything. And Linus Sandin's going to be a good player too, so don't count him out. But at the end of the day, you make a good point about Allison. Allison could push for, a job, but you got David Costa there too, who's waiting in the wings there. I
would love to see Costa on this team.
Who's been waiting in the wings. He's sort of like an NAK, just hasn't gotten his shot. When he did get his shot this past year, he did a pretty good, solid job at it. He potted a goal in 5 games played. The Flyers are in a good situation. That's what I mean. And don't forget about Connor Bunnaman and Carson Chorwinski either, because you can't just throw them to the wayside either. They're going to be pushing for jobs too. And Chorwinski and Bunnaman are both very hard workers as well. This is a great spot for the Flyers to be in, because in the event that Grant, Pitlick, and Braun, they want to play, money games or they want to play term, which I understand why they would want to as players. The Flyers are in a good spot to say, okay, we can't afford that. We're going to unfortunately have to let you walk. The Flyers aren't in a spot like they have been in prior years where they have to keep players and they overpay for them with term and like they did Dale Weiss, for instance,
Now, Jamie, going off of that, do you think that if they let all three of them walk, they try to go for something in free agency?
Don't know, because there's a lot of different factors that play in.
Yeah.
Again, Oscar Lindblom could come back next year. So, like, if he comes back, what's he going to want, in terms – his RFA status is up in the air right now in terms of cap space.
Mhm.
Nolan Patrick, what he's going to want. I think he gets a 900 – I think he's only going to want a one-year deal.
Yeah.
Making for $925,000 what he's making now. But he may be asking for more. I don't know. And I'm not saying he is, and I'm not throwing it out.
Yeah.
And AK may want more money now because he sees himself as a full-time NHLer now. So now he's played in himself to a raise possibly. Then you got Felipe Myers, who's going to make the same money, I believe, as Travis Sanheim.
I agree with that.
Contract as Travis Sanheim. So there's a raise there. And then they have the future there. The following year, they have Travis Sanheim to re-sign again, and they have Carter Hart, to give his contract to. And then from there, then you got Sean Couturier and Claude Giroux. Now, those are things that Chuck Fletcher will work out, but I don't know. I don't know if he's going to want to save, the cap, because the Flyers are in a good spot to where they don't need anybody.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. They don't need anyone. And it's the thing. It's the same thing with, like, I talked about this with Yariv, like trying to get like a superstar, like a Johnny Gaudreau or something. They don't need it right now. In 2-3 years, yeah, go ahead. They don't need it right now. They're perfect. They're in the best position they can be in, and that's they have too much depth. That is the best position that they can be in right now because it doesn't matter for them. They don't have to do it. It's fine.
I do want to point out that we never even bring up Isaac Radcliffe, and he's probably better than every young player we just mentioned, and he might be ready next year for all we know because we have no idea. He is a humongous kid. He's 6'6", and he moves the way he does. And obviously, he didn't have a great first year.
Yeah.
But he had a much better second half. And that, that usually is a sign that this kid's about to make a breakout. It's just kind of crazy how much talent we have. Like, back in the day, Isaac Radcliffe would have been by far our best prospect. Like, if you think back like 5-6 years ago, we'd be like, oh my God, we have this 6'6" kid who scored 40 goals. Like, oh my God, we have our next star player. Now we're like forgetting to even bring him up, But
but don't forget, you got Matthew Strome and Pascal LaBerge down there too. And
while I agree with what you're saying, and I really like both of them. Like, Isaac Radcliffe is a top 6 forward potential type.
Oh yeah.
Guy. Don't even talk about it. Jay O'Brien.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Oh, it's great. Listen, these are fantastic problems. Again, these are fantastic problems to have that many teams don't have. And the Flyers are in that position to where, I would love to re-sign a Derek Grant or Tyler Pitlick. I don't think they will sign both. They could possibly re-sign one. I just think the one, if they do, is Derek Grant, in my opinion, because he's more versatile, and because, like what you said, Fletcher doesn't throw the term elite out there for just anybody. When you talk about a person being a great penalty killer, I think that's a re-up, in my opinion. But it depends on term and money, to be honest.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, okay, so our last thing is, I think we kind of talked about this already, but our 30 skaters. Obviously we know all the others. Is there any – let's just talk about Black Aces again. Anybody that we think might make those Black Aces that maybe haven't been mentioned? We haven't heard really from Patrick yet, so that's obviously – that one's kind of still up in the air, but it's pretty obvious there's going to be – most of the players are going to be there. Nothing official yet, so, leave it open that any of the players might not be there. But at this point, anybody that maybe we haven't talked about that either one of you guys want to bring up?
Chris Stewart?
No.
Personality-wise, I just don't think he would play.
Yeah, I agree. Like, he's the only one I can think of. Honestly, yeah. I think honestly I might have. Like, when I did the video with Jamie on it, I think we brought up every single possible candidate that I could think of off the top of my head. You think there's any way we maybe see Kasha?
Yeah.
That's where I was hitting at. Was
Sushko even.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Here's the thing about Chris Stewart. Typically, the NHL playoffs, they're physical, but they're not, hey, drop the mitts, let's fight. Take some players off the ice for 5 minutes. It does happen from time to time, but and that's why I'm hesitant about Chris Stewart being there. Now, I'm not surprised by any of these because you know why? It's funny because we called them all. So you know what I mean?
We did.
Like,
we did.
So I think it's neat. Some people were probably surprised that Andy Andreev was at the ice. Now, here's the catch about Nolan Patrick Reef that I don't know if you guys know, but any player that is on the ice for Phase 3 has a possibility of playing for Phase 4. So any player that is there has to be there as a possible for Phase 4. So, Sam Moran can't be there. Training. He can't be around there. That's one of the things in the return to play clauses that they put in there. So if Nolan Patrick is there, that means he will travel to the hub city. So that's where I'm getting at. Anybody who's there for Phase 3 is going to more than likely travel for the hub city now. Or possible travel because they're able to have 30 skaters and 4 goaltenders. Goaltenders are unlimited, but they're only allotted 52 people to travel to the hub cities. 31 players is what they're able to travel with, correct? So,
yep.
If Patrick is there, that means he will travel to the hub city more. Absolutely, no doubt.
You gotta figure he's coming.
I can't see him not.
If he wasn't, then the Flyers already know they should already address it now. Which because the Flyers are a very smart organization, and that's why I think he will be there, is because of how smart the Flyers organization is. If he wasn't going to be there, I think they would have addressed it early and shot it down. You know what I mean? Or they might be waiting for the final approval from the CBA, which should be coming out at the latest Friday. So maybe that's what they're waiting on to make an announcement if he will or won't be, be there. But if he's there, that means he's traveling to the hub city.
Yeah. And listen, I got one last thing for you. It's completely off topic. It's going back to Lindy Ruff with the Devils. Do you guys think there was any way that they could have signed Mike Babcock?
I think no. I think
because I thought about that once. I saw your tweet about Ruff when you retweeted it, and then the comment under was about Gallant, and then as soon as that popped in, I thought of Babcock, and I was like,
well, Gallant is actually that's the one where I'm like, I think that's the big name available, and I would actually sign him ASAP. I was shocked that he got fired, to be honest with you.
So was I. That was stupid.
I mean, I kind of get it. They still did well, but I mean, he's a good coach. But then again, good coaches get fired all the time. Like, it happens.
But we don't know what happened.
That's what I'm saying. We don't know what conversation.
It could have been something else within the organization that happened because he had too much success.
And that's the same thing with Hextall too. Like, it could have been something else in the organization.
Well, Hextall and
he was just not. He was too patient. That's what Hextall.
I think it was more of that, and there was something else that was in there with the organization as well.
Those are all. I mean, you'll always have people be pissed off.
Losing.
That's it.
Losing.
Losing
the interest of the fans.
Cutting ties with Hextall.
You have to realize it probably escalated. It didn't happen overnight, right? Like, probably what happened is that little things were probably said over time, right? Comcast all of a sudden is getting involved. It's their investment. They're seeing what people are saying online, and I know the way Comcast thinks. They definitely look at all that stuff online. They definitely do a ton of research, like market analysis. So they go and they see people complaining, talk about mediocrity, and they're like, we're not mediocre. We have money. Let's spend to the cap. Like, what are you doing, And to some degree, they were right? Like, look what happened when they brought Fletcher in. Now, having said that, there was clearly a loss of communication, but that wasn't done overnight. I think Hextall refused to budge. He didn't want to play the corporate game. He got his job under Snyder, who does not behave like Comcast. And then when corporate America came in, it was our way or the highway. Hextall saw the highway. And now Fletcher, who I think knows how to play that game a little bit better, but also gives Comcast what they wanted and the fans what they wanted. Hextall probably would have made us wait another year. And Fletcher's like, no, we're going to be competitive now. That is the old school Flyers mentality that got us to be one of the most profitable teams in the country. So it's something, I see both sides, but I think it was a build-up over time. Hextall just does not fit with corporate America. I mean, I don't. So I can imagine that he does not, because I aligned with him on weird stuff.
Well, he did a hell of a job for the organization.
He did.
There's always going to be some, bad beef somewhere within the organization. So I'm pretty sure that somewhere within the organization, maybe some people aren't happy in terms of, what Chuck Fletcher, or something has done, or something. You'll never. Where I'm getting at is that you can't please everybody. Now, I know the alumni were shunned from Hextall and stuff. Apparently, stuff has come out in terms of that, to where he didn't want many alumni around the team because it could possibly be the reverse effect of a positive effect. I read that multiple times and stuff. Whether I didn't personally see it with my own eyes, so I can't say, and I'm not, that type to throw shade like that. So, but Hextall did a good job.
He did.
You get
Phenomenal job.
When you get your first position and you're full, when you're finally a general manager, he made some mistakes. If he got a second chance, he may not make that mistake anymore. He might be the gunner, the gunslinger.
Yeah.
And the same thing goes for, Dave Haxtell. It was his first time, as an NHL head coach. He did well, in his first season. He took a bottom end team, revived the team, took him to an unexpected playoff berth. In just his first season, they missed the next season, make the playoffs the next season, missed that season. I think he may even be able to learn if he was given another shot, possibly. But they're all young. Haxtall's a young coach. You mentioned John Hines. He's a young coach. So, they learn, and, it's like, if things don't go well for Dan Quinn, in New York, he's young. He may get another shot. You know what I mean? So, when you're given your first shot at a job, and that's where I was getting at earlier in the podcast, Chris, when I asked you that, how many times do you succeed at your job, right away? It usually takes time to
you don't.
You might be decent, but to fully grasp your job in detail to where you can do it by yourself and stuff like that, it takes time. It could take a few years for you to get that. It could take 2-3 years. You see yourself as a prospect. Now, Reef brought up a good point. Corporate America, you don't have a few years. You don't. You have now to succeed. If you don't, you could be out the door the next year.
You're not wrong. But yeah, I don't disagree. But I think overall, we're going to end on a high note, right? And let's end the podcast on a high note here, because it's coming into a weird place where this is starting to become real. The season is actually coming, all the hurdles and the panic. And while it's still happening, we know that the season is inevitable, despite what anybody might say. It's inevitable. It's definitely coming. So it's exciting. It's exciting. And I'm excited to see everybody come in. I'm excited to see Nolan Patrick come back to camp. Fingers crossed. And I think it's going to be a great playoffs. And even if we don't have the success that we all thought we were going to have, because this is a whole new season, it's just going to be good to have hockey again. And I think
with the next few days for the training camp roster to come out, to see who will be there. We already know the full 4 goaltenders. Of course, are going to be Carter Hart, Brian Elliott, Alex Lyon, and Kirill Ustimenko. Ustimenko and German Rupsov have been skating on the ice, so you already know that they will be more than likely traveling to the hub city, there's never a doubt. Now, they might not take all the goaltenders out there right away, because you're only allotted 31 skaters, but you're unlimited goaltenders. But you're allotted 31 players, 52 people total.
Right. Well, yeah, and that's all I was saying is, just coming back, we got a lot of players coming in. We didn't even mention Rubtsov, actually, and it's a whole different case. But I think we're in a good place. I think we can end on that note, and I think we'll be back next week. Actually, we have another one coming out with Curtis Gabriel soon. We have Russ Cohen on the podcast next week. And obviously,
it's going to be fun.
Yeah, that's going to be a good one. We're pretty excited for that one. So we'll look forward to that one.
The guy's just a class act. He's a funny guy. He really is.
Well, I'm sure we're going to have fun, and everybody's going to see that tomorrow. Well, I guess when the episode comes out later this week.
Too. Chris, where you at?
He's here still. And honestly, follow Chris. Follow his content, Flyers Fan Mania 93 on
Thank you.
Twitter.
Appreciate
YouTube,
that, guys.
YouTube as well. Check out his stuff. He's always making videos, always putting stuff out, and obviously partners with our site. So follow everybody. Follow our team. Look out for more stuff. We're getting there. And as Jamie grabs his head, another long episode, another long Flyers rant. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We'll be back soon with more content. And just remember to stay curious.